It's a beautiful misty morning after a very, very rainy night. Turned out the campsite I picked was in a dip, which I didn't realize, but it was deep enough to turn into a giant puddle, and everything in my tent got soaked. I actually had to step out in the middle of a torrential downpour and unstake it and drag it to higher ground, which is slopey, but it stayed dry. And then I spent the rest of the night trying to dry things out, but everything's still pretty damp this morning. I am heading into Twin Lakes in a little while, and I'm hopeful that rain will hold off long enough that I can dry some things out, a little bit at least. And then I have to make some decisions about whether I'm going to go back up to the trail and walk around the lake, which people say is not at all trail-like and not a nice part of the hike. Lots of people think it shouldn't be part of the Colorado Trail, but I can't voice on that right now because I haven't done it yet. And the other option is to take a shortcut out of town and hit the Collegiate West from there. But that knocks off a few miles of trail, and I hate to skip trails. So we shall see based on where campsites are and what time I get out of town and that sort of thing. I'll let you know later. There's a little pond up here with a beaver dam in the middle of it. And the sun's coming up over that way through the clouds. Looks like those are the Twin Lakes up ahead of me. And unfortunately the view isn't good, but I think it will get better as I go downhill. Well, there's a somewhat better view. Really beautiful. All right, so I worked out a plan so I don't have to skip those miles. I am actually just got set up here at the lakeside campground right outside of Twin Lakes. I don't know if you can see the lake. There's a lake down there. There is a little side trail off the Colorado Trail that brings you into this campground, and I ran into the camp host and asked if they had anything available, and they did. He's like, just set up right over there, and then there's another side trail that takes me back out, and I can head down into town, get all my stuff charged up, and eat some good food, then come back up here, spend the night, and first thing in the morning I can head out and do the 6+ miles around the lake, and then on to into the Collegiate West with no skipping, time for rest, time to continue getting acclimated, and then hopefully be in fine form by tomorrow or the day after. We'll see. It is taking me a little longer than I expected to get my trail legs, but overall I'm feeling good, so that's awesome. And yeah, I'm excited to keep going. All right, this is my road walk into town. Cross my fingers I don't get rained on, but I think I probably will based on the forecast. Well, this is not a bad view for a picnic lunch. I have been hanging out at the visitor center here in Twin Lakes, and that's the main building right there. I'm getting all my stuff charged up, and unfortunately at the general store it was raining and they only have some space outside, so I didn't want to sit out there, but they sent me over here because it's got Wi-Fi as well as electric, which is awesome. And I'm a little disappointed because I was really excited about going to Punky's and getting some barbecue. It's a food truck, and apparently they're closed today. They don't seem to have a regular schedule, so the general store staff thought they were open, and when I went over there they were closed, which made me sad. But I've got a nice little chicken salad sandwich, and yep, eating my lunch and charging my stuff, and then I'll be heading back up the road and the hill to the campground for the night. Well, I'm hiking back from my second and unplanned visit to Twin Lakes. I'm unmistakable on the side of the road in my newly acquired poncho because my rain jacket wet out. But when I get back, I will tell you a little bit more about what's going on and a slight revision to plans. It is definitely a gray, overcast day today, and more in store the next couple of days. But as long as I don't get soaking wet, I'm okay with that. I am just about back to the campground, so I thought I'd sit on my stump for a minute and share my saga with you. Lessons learned and things that might be helpful to you too as well. So I find that one issue with gear is kind of, it's an inconvenience, right? 2 issues, kind of a problem. 3 issues might turn into a crisis if it happens in the wrong place. So I had the trifecta last night. Had a great day in town, sat at the visitor center charging up my stuff. The volunteer there was super friendly and very informative. Spent some time in the general store getting a few more things for resupply, and unfortunately didn't get to eat barbecue at Punky's because they were closed. So nice day in Twin Lakes until about 5 o'clock, because I stopped and had dinner at the lodge at 4 and had a lovely plate of chicken marsala that was very good, and a salad, because you also need greens on the trail. And then I decided it was time to hike back to the campground before it got too late. So I headed out about 5 o'clock, and I think it's a total of about 2 miles to get to the campground, maybe a little bit less, 1.5 miles or so on the road, which is not bad. It's got a nice wide shoulder and then a little bit of trail. So I headed back and it started sprinkling. I stopped to put my raincoat on, but I didn't pull out my umbrella because it was just sprinkling. And I thought, it's fine. I seam sealed my backpack. It should be completely waterproof. It's made of Dyneema. I should be good to go. Hiked it back up to the campground and went to see the camp host because they had water. And this is a huge campground. There's over 70 sites. And there's not water spigots throughout the campground. It's a Forest Service campground. So basically you get pit toilets and a campsite, and that's it. So he told me he had water, and I said, okay, well, before I stop back at my tent, I'll just go get some water. So by the time I got to their place at the camp host site, which is at the very entrance to the campground, probably 1/2 mile from where my site was, I would think. It was a long ways. I was a drowned rat. And I had gone through my campsite on the way, and I saw that water was kind of pooling around my tent, and I had left my quilt out to dry, and I'd set my tent up to dry. So I was like, that's not good, but I'll deal with it when I get back, not realizing what a long walk it was going to be to the camp host. When I got back to my site, I took a quick peek inside the tent and saw that it was dry, but it looked like it was going to wet out pretty soon. So I stashed my pack and pulled out my little poop trowel and started digging trenches around the tent to get the water to drain down. It did look like a flat site, but water was coming down from the road into the site, and yeah, it just wasn't good. So I did that. It took me probably, I don't know, I wasn't watching my clock, but maybe 1/2 hour of just pouring rain and digging trenches, desperately trying to keep water from getting in my tent. And then I wanted to go ahead and get changed into my warm, dry clothes before I crawled in my tent, because I didn't want to bring more water into the tent with me. So I grabbed my backpack and went up to the pit toilet, which is a pretty small room. Some of them I know are really big. This one was fairly small. Started pulling out things from my backpack to try to get to my clothes bag, and discovered that everything was wet. The seam sealing somehow didn't work. And in the rain that I'd been in for a good hour at that point, I guess, just soaked through. So even my clothing bag, which is this little, I don't know if you can see it, that little day pack that I keep my clothes in and then use for town trips, wet through. It's still nylon. It's kind of water resistant, but not waterproof. And I've never had a problem before with anything getting wet inside the backpack. But clothes inside the backpack were wet, which meant my PJs, my wool top and bottom, were wet, along with everything else. And all the stuff that I was wearing was absolutely dripping, soaking wet. So that wasn't good. And I spent some time in the bathroom just sorting all my gear, what was mostly dry, what was sort of dry, what was soaking wet, and repacked so that I could throw some stuff over some tree branches, the soaking wet stuff, and then take some other stuff to set outside my tent or in my tent, depending on how wet it was. Anyway, put on my wet PJs, took my soaking wet clothes back. I didn't even try to bring them out, but I knew it was supposed to stop raining later, so I was hoping that overnight they might drip dry a bit. And yeah, I got inside the tent. There was some water in there, but thankfully the quilt had not gotten wet. And part of the reason that I was soaking wet is because my rain jacket had wet out. So my 3 problems that needed immediate attention were my raincoat wetting out. It's an Outdoor Research Helium-2. I used one on the AT. Had a similar problem, and they replaced it for me when I got back. So I assumed the new one would be better. And I haven't worn it in the rain that much, other than just light rain. So that wet out, and I was getting wet underneath. The tent floor, which is another piece of gear that I've had some trouble with. I've got the Nemo Hornet 2 person, and I've had that replaced 3 times by Nemo for these issues with the floor, and I'm done. It's a lovely tent. It's lightweight. It's super comfortable. It's easy to set up, but I just can't have a wet floor, so I'm going to have to be looking for a new tent ASAP. And then the third problem is the backpack. And I'm kicking myself because I have pack liners and I left them at home because I didn't think I need them because my pack's waterproof. And then I could have picked up a pack liner in Leadville. Somebody left a nice trash compactor bag in the hiker box and I didn't take it because I had seam sealed my backpack and I thought it was waterproof. So I found myself on my third day back on trail sitting in my tent wondering, what the heck do I do? Is this a sign that I've made a mistake and shouldn't be out here? Or have I just made some stupid mistakes? Or is it just bad luck? I don't know. I didn't know what I was going to do. I called my boyfriend. He's like, do you want me to come get you? Because he's in Denver. It's like 2.5 hours from here. I was like, nope, I'm not ready to get off the trail. I just need to sleep on it and figure out what I'm going to do. When I got up early this morning, I could see some slivers of blue sky like that behind me. And I felt a little bit more optimistic about life. And I also realized that if I could solve one or two of those problems, I might be in a better situation. Running to town or out of town, because there's no outfitter here, but even trying to go to Leadville right now with a Leadville 100 race coming up this weekend is not a practical idea. And I don't want to just throw money at a tent just because it's a tent. I want to make sure that I buy one that's well researched. So tent was probably not going to be solved, but I do carry an emergency blanket, a Mylar blanket that is working well. When I put it on the inside of the tent floor, it gives me a barrier between the wet floor and all my gear. So that is working out okay for now. And I thought, well, if I can get to town and get a garbage bag to line my pack, if I can get a poncho to wear instead of my rain jacket, I'll be in good shape and can start hiking again. So that's what I did today. And I have to tell you, this camp host at the Lakeview Campground has been absolutely amazing. I was packed up and just about ready to hike in with all my gear back to town when he stopped by and he said, hey, I came by earlier, but you weren't moving. I wasn't moving because I was in my tent trying to get everything dry, but he didn't know that I wasn't still sleeping. But he's like, look, you know, we can help you out. And he took me up to his camp area, and they have a tent that they were allowing me to dry some things out, to charge my electronics and that sort of thing. He did me the kindness of running me into town so that I could get the things that I needed. And I told him, I'm like, don't worry about waiting for me. I'm just going to hike back. So that's what I did. I'm here now. It's about lunchtime and I'm just going to take the afternoon to relax, maybe edit some videos, get my head straight after all the challenges that I've had, and head out in the morning, hike 6 miles around the lake, which should be lovely early in the morning. And I do intend to get up and get out early. And then I will hit the beginning of the Collegiate West and start the climb up towards Hope Pass tomorrow. I get over how beautiful the view is from this campground. What a treat to be able to be here. Got a little friend. He wants to get in the water, but he can't reach it.